Everybody, welcome back to the IGN Movies podcast. It's myself and Terri Schwartz.
Hello.
No Chris Carl this week. He's at New York Comic Con.
He's at New York Comic Con. We banned him. He's
That's
in timeout
right.
this week.
Yeah. Well, he can be naughty. So just saying. We actually had some big news drop this morning. It's Thursday, and we found out that Marvel Studios has themselves even more pictures in the works. I don't know. I'm wearing an old-timey shirt, so I guess I'll have to talk old-timey too, see? She's not used to my old-timey guy voice. I do it all the time.
Soon. One of these times we're just going to have you do an entire podcast.
Entire podcast, keeping it real.
Perfect.
So we found out that Ant-Man's getting a sequel entitled Ant-Man and the Wasp coming July 6th, 2018. And then there are 3 untitled movies Marvel will now release in 2020.
That are technically phase 3, right?
Still phase 3.
They never specified. They said it was
Could have
phase
started
3.
phase 4 with that.
Right, that's what I thought it was. They still counted them as phase 3 movies in the announcements.
Which makes you wonder, and we can get into this in further detail in a minute, if there isn't going to be, if they're setting up this overarching kind of narrative almost for post-Infinity War, but we'll get to that. So the dates for the 2020 films are May 1st, July 10th, November 6th. Now, because of these new announcements today, and this is all official right from Marvel, they changed the release dates for Black Panther and Captain Marvel. Not the first time both of those movies have had their dates shifted. It happened.
Spider-Man.
Yep, Spidey.
Troublemaker Spider-Man.
Right, he's a friendly neighborhood wall crawler until you have a movie in the pipeline. And then in which
until
case
you're
it's
Captain
like,
Marvel.
excuse me, I'm Spider-Man, I'm coming through.
Yeah.
So Black Panther actually moved up from July 2018 to February 16th, 2018. Captain Marvel, however, was moved back from November 2018 to March 8th, 2019. Now that's about 4 months, and
months or so.
Black Panther got pushed up 6 months.
And the other movie coming out that year is Infinity War Part 1. So they're sticking to that 3 Marvel movie a year plan.
Because
we're never going to run out of Marvel movies ever.
No, I mean, let's face it, people. This is keeping the lights on everywhere for a while. 2018 is Black Panther, Infinity War, Ant-Man and Wasp. 2019, Captain Marvel, Infinity War 2, and Inhumans.
And we will have a quiz on all those dates at the end of this podcast.
You have to have like that Rain Man-like ability.
Yeah, you can't rewind. There's no rewind functionality on this
none.
right now. Sorry.
We're taking it all away from you. So let's talk about, though, given today's Marvel Studio announcement of the Ant-Man and the Wasp and these new 2020 release dates and the shifting of those dates for Black Panther and Captain Marvel, there was a vocal contingent of fans online not happy with the fact that Captain Marvel, yet again, gets postponed. And I know, that this is... I'll let you state it, because you were stating it much better than I was this morning. So take it away.
We sort of had a little divide in the office. So, I don't think that Kevin Feige at Marvel is like, gonna push back that one female superhero movie another year.
You don't know he has a giant dartboard of Carol Danvers in his office.
Maybe Carol Danvers is just his arch nemesis, and he's just trolling. And that movie is not coming out at all. It's just one big troll.
Find out he had an ex-girlfriend named Carol Danvers.
No, I'm really excited Ant-Man and the Wasp is coming out. I really liked Ant-Man. I was so excited about the introduction of the Wasp, and I can't wait to meet her as a character. But it is disappointing that the one standalone, individual Marvel superhero movie, Captain Marvel, keeps getting pushed back, and now we aren't getting her until 2019. It just seems... In a world where Marvel is moving forward, in a world where Marvel is doing a lot of things great, it's just surprising that it's taking them so long to diversify their slate in having a superhero have her own movie. That it's being pushed so far into. You jinxed me by saying that I was saying this so well earlier, and I can't get this out right now. I'm like,
but you also pointed out earlier too, because the spin that Marvel was trying to put out in their announcement was that the Wasp will be the first female superhero with her name in the title in the MCU,
which is not a great spin
because she's second billing in a way, and it's,
Yeah, like we have Black Widow. We're getting Jessica Jones later this year on Netflix. Like, yes, there are a lot of Marvel superheroines in the mix, but at the same time, Marvel is aware that people feel this lack of diversity, and Phase 3 is supposed to remedy that.
Right.
And by constantly pushing back this movie, it's just disappointing. I again don't think it's vindictive. Like, it's clearly all business.
Right.
They can only put out so many movies a year. Infinity War, I think, is very important. Those seem to be like the main tent poles that they need to hit, and everything else can move around that. But it's just a shame that Captain Marvel again had to be a victim of this.
Well, I'm going to address the part where you said business, because I really do think it's simply a matter of, they're announcing release dates and switching the movies around. They did it with Thor Ragnarok. They did it with Guardians 2. They just, I think it's just like a dog marking his territory of like, hey, competitors, that's our weekend. And they'll plug and play whatever they have to around there. Now, Captain Marvel is only getting pushed back 4 months.
But a full year, like it's a year. It's 2018 to 2019.
Here's the glass half full way to look at it, okay? Which is, instead of coming in the third movie you're talking about in 2018, she's the first movie you're talking about in 2019, and kind of setting the tone for the rest of that year, and the way that people are looking forward to, like, so when they do their big, movies coming up this year, it's not like you're getting stuck with the sort of Fantastic Four slot of like, well, you're the end of summer movie, or in her case, it was originally November, so you're going up against, and we don't know too how much of this is coming from Disney and some of the Star Wars stuff they have planned too. Maybe there's some Star Wars announcements, and they just simply don't want to be sort of cannibalizing their own stuff. And we actually do have a reader email about this that I can get to in a minute. But yeah, I just, it is only a 4-month delay. If it had been pushed a year, like an entire year, a real year, not just from November to March. Is it to March? Yes. Marvel, stop changing dates. It's
failed the quiz.
It would be exactly. It would be, I think, even more troubling, because it's been in development, for a while. It was only officially announced last year, yes, but people want this movie.
And I still am surprised. Like, obviously, we keep comparing DC and Marvel to one another. Wonder Woman is going to come out far before Captain Marvel is at this point. And we're already toward the end of 2015. People have been clamoring for a Marvel female, led superhero movie for years, and now it's 4 more years on top of that. It is a long time, those reasons aside. But we were talking a little earlier about how it seems nearly impossible that that's going to be the first time she's actually introduced, even though that is her first movie. Kevin Feige reconfirmed recently that she was originally supposed to be in the Avengers, Age of Ultron, I almost said Civil War, end of the movie when we see the new Avengers. So, whether it's Guardians of the Galaxy 2, which has been denied, but who knows what's actually happening. Or
as evidenced by the fact that they're changing release dates so much.
Yeah, or even,
sure
who knows what it is,
situation.
but I'm sure that she's going to get some substantial character introduction, maybe like Black Widow did previously in Iron Man 2, and kept sort of getting involved in Captain America, the Winter Soldier, that I feel like we will see her at some point. It is a shame, even if it's purely the fact on paper that we aren't getting a solo Marvel superheroine movie until 2019.
I do wonder if there aren't some other, again, business factors at play. Like, maybe the actor they have in mind for her and the director they have in mind for the movie, they probably know something. They certainly know a lot more than we do about what's going on. So maybe it's that they had to push the movie too, because of whatever window in their schedule where they can make the movie. They weren't going to make that release date, and rather than change it when the thing's in production and they already know, like, they weren't going to make that date and it looks bad for the movie, like, oh, is the movie troubled or whatever. Even Ant-Man got bumped too during its troubled production. So I think maybe they're just trying to be cognizant of all the many different moving parts. Maybe the script's not quite there yet either, or maybe they're using Captain Marvel as a way to kind of shoehorn in things for Infinity War or a post-Infinity War world, and they require a little bit more time. I would just advise fans to not despair too much. It does suck that it's getting postponed again. It always sucks when these things get kicked down the road, especially this one where it's,
this is a very special movie and something I think a lot of people.
This is a banner movie where it's like this is going to be a milestone, and but it's but they did it. They're pushing it. So I guess
the more we talk about it, the more of a change is going to be made.
Let's just call up Feige. So, but on the Captain Marvel front, do you think that, if we do get her ahead of time, and you did say that maybe they'll take the Black Widow route, do you think there's any chance that maybe they'll use the Netflix series as a way to kind of introduce her? Is that, it's so street level, it doesn't seem likely, but...
Yeah, I don't think so, just because they have made a point to keep them so separate.
Yeah.
They've already introduced Inhumans on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and no one is even answering that question because goodness knows what the state of that show will be by the time.
Do you think she could pop up in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.?
No. I just mean the way that the shows and the movies are affecting one another, that they're sort of standalone. I don't think that they will introduce Captain Marvel on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or Netflix, simply because she is such an important character. And when fans are already having the sentiment that she's being pushed aside, she's sort of being, put on the shelf, to introduce her on one of the shows, even though that might not necessarily be meant as a slight, could certainly be felt that way. And I think at a certain point it is political, because she is an important character. Black Panther we're meeting in Captain America Civil War, if you're like...
Although we were talking beforehand, too, about how the conversation when they did the big announcement up in the theater and at the
El Capitan Theater
in
Los Angeles.
They had, they introduced Chadwick Boseman on stage, and he's standing between Cap and Iron Man. It was going to be about the three of them.
And he was sort of filling the Spider-Man role in the comics.
And then they got Spider-Man, and now nobody's really talking about Black Panther, and it's like...
Though my argument, I think that his role will remain the same. I think people are talking about Spider-Man because we're like, what is going on with Spider-Man?
Right.
He's really just 15? Okay, but what is going on with him? So I think that that's the reason why the conversation has moved to him.
We have a reader email from John, who asked...
Hi, John.
Hello, John. And kind of address this a little bit, but with Marvel increasing this came in before today's announcement. So with Marvel increasing their yearly output to 3 films a year, and with a Star Wars film once a year, is there a real possibility of Disney, parent company to both, eating into their own audience? There is only so much time available to see so many films a year. What do you think?
It is a fair concern. I don't think that they'd want to have them come out, back-to-back weekends, or, especially not the same weekend.
They are fighting for the same audience.
They are fighting for the same audience, so I think that's definitely a valid concern. And I think that when we look at as you sort of touched upon earlier, when you do look at this sort of like chess game of figuring out which pieces go where, I think that the larger scope definitely plays into it. And I think you can even expand that to Pixar and some of those other movies that they're working on. Because the worst thing I think a studio like Disney could do is eat into its own audience.
Yeah, that's considering how brand heavy that is. Like, they definitely don't want to step on their own tail. Now, let's actually, before, I want to hear, we want to hear,
yes.
I'm sorry, about what you folks think of Captain Marvel getting shifted and Black Panther getting shifted. Do you think it's a slight? How disappointed are you that you're not getting Captain Marvel at the end of 2018 as you had been promised? So let us know in the comments. I want to talk about Ant-Man and the Wasp some more, though.
Yes. Because that is good news.
It is good news.
The bad effects of it aside, it is good news.
You know what it is? It's like a weird, birthday where, well, we got you the bike, but that electric guitar you wanted, it's on layaway. You're not getting it till next year. You know? But Ant-Man and the Wasp, clearly they set up Evangeline Lilly at the end of the first movie, and we saw the outfit and all that, and she had the little quip, about time, I think she said. What do you think the movie could actually be about? I think the consensus amongst fans seems to be they're going to go into the quantum realm and find her mom. They're going to find Janet Van Dyne, and old Hank Pym could join up too, because maybe Ant-Man and the Wasp isn't necessarily just referring to Paul Rudd and Evangeline Lilly.
Yeah, I hope the plot of the movie is not trying to save Janet Van Dyne, honestly. And this is something we talked
want
about
her
this
to
a lot.
die.
No, we talked about this a lot earlier because we were very.
In that microverse.
Well, it's been a while.
Yeah. But doesn't
this next
timestamps?
year
I was
is gonna
wondering
make the
about that.
difference.
Isn't microverse or the quantum realm, whatever it's? Doesn't timestamp still there? Because that was what I was curious about. Was like, that's like a brutal way to go. Like she's basically starving and nowhere.
Well, I guess we will have to wait and see how they play it in the
so.
MCU. But no, I honestly think that there could be a post-credits tease in one of the upcoming Marvel movies leading up to Ant-Man and the Wasp, where we see Janet Van Dyne, or we get some hint in one of those movies that she still exists, or that this hunt sort of continues for her. And I think that could be.
Dr. Strange will do that.
I'm sure, yeah. And I think that would be a much more interesting way to enter into this movie. But you're right, I do think that we will meet Janet Van Dyne in this movie and have Ant-Man and the Wasp have sort of this duality between both pairs. But I would love there to be some other, larger quests that they're going on, especially with the proximity to Infinity War and how these very large battles cosmic events, but things that are changing not only the course of this small, intimate story that we saw in Ant-Man, but the entire universe.
Yeah, I want to see them actually paint on a bigger palette this time. And, I think it's probably inevitable that they'll end up kind of, if they don't go after Janet Van Dyne, I bet you at least maybe there'll be more flashback stuff of young Hank and young Janet that they had their masks on in Ant-Man 1, but could be an excuse to, bring in, these younger characters for a flashback, a prologue, preamble.
At the same time, I don't want this movie to undersell the fact that it is Ant-Man and the Wasp with the characters that we know, like Evangeline Lilly.
Two Wasps, one movie.
Hope Van Dyne. I completely echoed her sentiment of it's about time. And I'm so excited to get to meet her Wasp because I think she will be so awesome and so badass. And I want her to get 50% of this movie. I don't want her to be.
Well, she could have done the job in the first movie. And they explain like they don't want her dad. Doesn't want her to get. But it's like, Well,
I was talking with Evangeline Lilly about that actually. And what she said is that they got to a point where it was a problem in the script where they couldn't keep justifying why Hope wasn't doing everything. It didn't make sense because she was so capable. And I thought that they did a pretty good job of dealing with that. But she is one of the most capable people in the MCU right now. And I want her to get her fair share.
I wonder, I would imagine we're going to see new suits and everything too. Like, she gets her armor, but if they are going to have old Hank Pym maybe suit up, which I bet you Michael Douglas would enjoy that instead of sitting around, scratching his beard. Do you think Tony Stark's going to build him a new suit, or is it going to be Hank building him a suit?
I'm sure it would be Hank. I don't think that Hank would want to let other people touch his technology.
Don't touch his particles. He doesn't like that.
Evangeline did say that she has 2 Marvel movies and 1 cameo in her contract. So if this is one of those movies, maybe she could be in the post-credits tease that I'm speculating and now want to be an actual thing searching for her mom.
I mean, geez, what if the post-credits tease in Doctor Strange is Wasp showing up to find her mom and
asking for some help or some insight into it.
Or
it would be awesome.
She just is there in the quantum realm, and you don't even get. Maybe I don't know. I'm fanficking this thing. We want to hear what you folks think. Ant-Man and the Wasp should be about. What kind of do you want to see them go into the quantum realm to get Janet, or basically just let her starve? That's what I'm wondering.
Dark so fast.
I'm just saying, I'll take it to those places. Longtime listeners and viewers know this. Let's move on and talk about speculate on those 2020 movies, though.
Okay.
There's
you have a
3
good
of them.
theory.
What was my theory again? I totally forgot. I told you.
Fantastic Four.
Oh yeah, Fantastic Four. And I had some readers tweet me about this this morning. Do you think we're gonna maybe the 2020 stuff is because Simon Kinberg, the writer producer of Fantastic Four, was asked by a Hollywood Reporter in a story today, are there talks about Marvel getting them back? And he said he honestly didn't know. And maybe he wouldn't be necessarily looped in if they were. He didn't say that, I'm just adding that part. So possibly Fantastic Four, but as we've said in past podcasts, to me they're kind of a damaged brand, but they do fit that cosmic way that they're going, so it's possible.
It could make sense to bring them in after the events of Infinity War. It's sort of hard to imagine what Marvel will be after Infinity War because we're already so far, we're 4 years away from that anyway, and that's was such a game-changing arc in the comics. It's bound to change many things we know to be true about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that it is really interesting that they tacked on 3 more movies after that. Like we're already so overstuffed in phase 3. I wouldn't be surprised if they, after the fact, come in and say, you know, one of these movies is phase 3 like we did with Ant-Man, but then 2 more start phase 4. But you know, looking back a little bit, I think personally, I wasn't crazy about Ant-Man as the end of phase 2. I think it would have had a lot more oomph if it had ended on Age of Ultron, you know, love or hate that movie. And I sort of feel the same way about Infinity War, that I think that could be a great way to just put you know, an end to that chapter and start over with something new, even if it is Fantastic Four or some other completely new characters that we care about.
Well, I wonder, because, you know, we're getting the solo Spider-Man reboot.
I should say, but they already said Inhumans is after Infinity War.
That's 2019.
No, it's 2020, right?
Let me bring up, I have the dates here. Again, Marvel, stop switching stuff around. No, it's listed as 2019. I had thought it was supposed to be 2020, but I also get it mixed up with the Green Lantern reboot, another cosmic superhero movie, which is set for 2020. But no, according to this list, it's 2019. But is it after? It's after Infinity War.
Okay, so that totally invalidates my whole thing.
So 2019 would start with Captain Marvel, Infinity War, and then Inhumans. Now 2020 is going to have these 3 mystery movies.
That's a crazy amount of movies. If you think back to how few were in phase 1 to how many were in
I can't keep up with this anymore. Like, okay, so the Spider-Man reboot is 2017. Here are some other theories of mine about these mystery movies. A Spidey team-up movie, you know?
Drew Goddard did say that his Sinister Six idea could totally work in the MCU because it was supposed to be standalone.
Right.
Okay, all right.
It's possible. I'm on board. So maybe a Spidey team-up, maybe, you know, Fantastic Four, or maybe something that Joshua Yale submitted this morning.
Our comics editor at
Comics
IGN.
editor. New Avengers. That way you have Spider-Man leading the Avengers, a younger, fresher team.
That would be awesome.
I mean, there's some groundwork there already.
Yeah.
And if what Feige was saying to you, right, was that Infinity War is going to basically be the end of the Avengers as we know it. You know?
Right.
So that does
the team is going to change pretty substantially. That's what they said at a Q&A recently promoting Age of Ultron. So I think no matter what happens, it is going to be a major overhaul of the characters who we've come to know. And I get
maybe
those
Vision
3...
and Scarlet Witch could get their movie.
Oh, that's true. That Elizabeth Olsen was talking recently in an interview about how much she would love to see
that.
Them.
Would be, I mean, come on, there's a lot of freaky stuff you'd have to
And
explain.
it's true, you're right. They don't need to necessarily be new characters being introduced. They could be sequels. They just don't want to give away now what those sequels would be.
I mean, Falcon could be getting his own movie.
Right, yeah. I think one of the issues that they had with Age of Ultron coming out is that they'd already announced so much of the Phase 3 lineup, and that sort of lowered the stakes. And so I hope that they keep those movies a mystery for a while, because if they do want us to be concerned about whether, you know, Captain America gets out of it or any of the various Avengers, then you can't say, oh, well, you have Captain America 17 coming out after this.
Another idea for a 2020 movie that we bounced around this morning was, what if Rocket and Groot get their own movie? I mean, that'd be great. I think it'd be a lot of fun. They're just kind of palling around the galaxy. Or maybe it's Adam Warlock or some stuff. People the sky's the limit now with Marvel.
You pick your favorite character, and they're going to get a movie, and we're going to move
Pretty
Captain
much.
Marvel back for it.
Exactly, yeah. Wonder Man now gets his own movie, you know? Let us know in the comments what you folks would like to see these 3 mystery movies be in 2020. Now let us move on to things not Marvel.
I refuse.
But DC. Okay, there was a report today from the tracking board that the Justice League Dark movie, aka Dark Universe, that has been long in development now, Guillermo del Toro no longer directing, but he will produce it. And he's getting another producer, a big Hollywood heavyweight guy named Scott Rudin, Oscar winner. He's done friggin' everything. He did No Country for Old Men, Social Network, Steve Jobs. You might know his name from the hacked Sony emails. He was the one who made some, rude is in his name. He made rude comments about Angelina Jolie, but yet he also was the inspiration for Kevin Spacey's character in Swimming with Sharks. So he though.
So good news.
he can look. This guy can get things done, and him coming into a DC movie does class it up quite a bit. This guy does a lot. He's done Wes Anderson movies, Coen Brothers. You know, it's a pretty. He can draw on some talent. Fincher, everything. So, furthermore, the report states he's moving so fast that they could start filming by next year.
Oh wow! And that's very close at this point.
And that it would exist within the established new DC movie continuity. So it's not going to be, I guess, like the Captain. I almost said Captain Marvel Shazam movie, where it's going to be, because it's New Line, it's slightly not that, but we'll see if that hangs in there. Are you stoked about Dark Universe, but a Justice League Dark movie?
Yeah, I'm still bummed that it wouldn't be Guillermo's movie.
Yeah.
You know, we talked a lot last week about how much we enjoy him as a filmmaker and an auteur. But I think that when they do, it seems like find a new director, they should have someone with a similar sensibility, someone,
right.
You know, like Edgar Wright or someone like that who has their own very unique, distinct style.
Wouldn't that be a swipe at Marvel? Look at that.
And I didn't even mean it like that. But no, I think that
you should do the Atom. Just to really I just want to make a movie about a small man.
That was the one goal. No, but I think someone who the audiences know what they're getting
right.
With that filmmaker. And it's sort of interesting, that's sort of the opposite of Marvel's strategy, which is find very talented directors, but people who are able to work within this larger whole. And I think that DC is going the other way, where they're bringing in very respected producers, and they're bringing in, you know, well-liked directors for the most part, and having them sort of.
She bit her lip as
she I was like, Zack Snyder. How do they like to define him? No, but bringing in these people who do have their own unique styles and are able to throw that up on the screen and not be restricted by this larger brand. So I think that that's really the way to make that movie a success, because it, you know, Dark Universe, it's a lot of
Edgar
weirdness.
is an interesting name to throw out there, because in this report, saying that it was going to be part of the larger DC universe, and that this Justice League Dark they'll eventually kind of interact down the line with the regular Justice League, and they made a reference to Guardians. This would be kind of like what Guardians is to Avengers. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, maybe Justice League Dark, they're looking at it as this could be our supernatural Guardians of the Galaxy. This could be, you know, Swamp Thing, is he basically their Groot, you know, and
also how dark are they going to make it? Like, dark is in the title.
Yeah.
And Guardians obviously is not that dark of a movie, and it seems like DC is going a lot darker than what Marvel has been doing, a bit less family friendly. So, you know, who is a director who can keep that levity and keep, you know, that brightness in it, even though it is a dark movie? And I think that's something Guillermo is able to do in his movies, and something that they should, you know, not find someone who's...
Sam Raimi could.
Yeah, exactly. Like, not someone who's a direct copy of Guillermo, but someone who has those right sensibilities.
You're right. No, I think it's absolutely, you know, something where you can find the. You have to find the light within the dark. I don't know, but I think, like, you know, the kind of furthering the parallel with Guardians, I mean, basically John Constantine would be like the British Peter Quill.
Right.
You know, and there are you know, yeah, it's interesting when you start thinking about it. You can kind of line them up like that. So I'm sure, you know, Scott Rudin's looking at that like, that's some paychecks right there for that'll fund all his artsy films and his Oscar bait movies. Now let's.
Or he can turn that into an artsy Oscar bait movie.
Right. Wes Anderson maybe could do it.
Oh my God!
Wouldn't
Can
that
you
be
imagine
insane?
Wes Anderson doing Justice League Dark? Of all
Owen
the
Wilson
movies.
is going. Wow.
Okay, I would see
like
that movie.
Supernatural. We want to know what you folks think about this news about Justice League Dark. You know, how do you feel about Guillermo not directing it, but still being involved creatively? And who would you like to see direct it in his stead? Let's talk now about the overall future of many big Hollywood franchises, because there is news to boot in the last week about what's going on with some of the biggest franchises out there.
Spoiler alert, they aren't going away.
They're not going away.
They are sticking around forever.
Well, speaking of one that is sticking around far longer than I think a lot of us would care for, is Transformers. That's going to be around for at least another decade, according to Hasbro Studios' boss, that they're already working on. You know, they're already working on 5, but 6, 7, and 8. So that's like for the next decade, and that's just the main Transformers saga. There's going to be the spin-offs, and I think the Cybertron animated movie and stuff like that. So that's happening. We also though have the Terminator franchise,
Which is not dead,
well,
but
here
delayed
we go.
indefinitely.
Here we go with
I
this
think is
one.
the wording.
Now, the Skydance CCO was at an event, and you know, the initial reports were that the franchise is on hold. It bombed domestically, didn't even crack 100 million. But thanks China, it made like something like $350 million.
It made enough money to...
That you wouldn't necessarily pull the plug on it.
Right.
So instead of saying it's on hold, the spin they're saying is they're readjusting the franchise.
Yeah, and what she said essentially was, well, something worked about this movie, but a lot of things didn't, so we're figuring out how to fix that.
Yeah, let's see here. I actually have some of the quotes, yada, yada, yada. I wouldn't say on hold so much as readjusting. Happily, we live in a world where the domestic number had a level of importance 10 or 15 years ago. I'm not saying it's not important, it is, but we have to play to a worldwide market. In terms of Terminator, the worldwide market paid attention, but we're not taking the domestic number lightly. Goes on to say they'll use data and research to do a worldwide study and really talk to audiences about what they loved and what maybe didn't work for them, so that the next we take with the franchise is the right one. I'm just going to come out and say it. Just kill the Terminator franchise. It's done. There were only 2 good movies and a TV show that's well-liked but flopped. It's done. There's nothing left there. You've taken every blood from that stone that you're going to get. And as long as they're sticking with Arnold and John Connor, like, just skip ahead 100 years and tell me something new. Otherwise, just pull the plug on it. They've tried rebooting it like 3 friggin' times.
And they haven't captured what it was that worked, and which maybe it was just
2
Linda
good
Hamilton.
Movies, you know?
Yeah. I mean, what really bothered me deeply about Terminator Genesis is the fact that none of its answers were ever intended to exist within that movie. Like, the only way you understand the events of that movie is watching the second and third, which, you know, on the surface, like, that's how a lot of these movies are created, but structurally it's like a huge flaw and really sort of repulsive it really disgusted me that it was so clear that they never had any intention of, you know, having this movie be a fully formed movie. And in that sense, I'm like, you know what? wrap those things up.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to make another movie, make one more movie, don't make a trilogy.
Right.
Wrap them up, just have it out there for the sake of like creating a story.
Right.
Like this isn't a TV show, this is a movie. A movie should always stand on its own as a property, even if it is servicing these other stories. And I think that's where you have an issue sometimes with second movies and trilogies, with movies like Age of Ultron that have so many needs. Yeah, that have so many needs beyond just being a great movie. And I think that in trying to reboot a franchise as big and as well liked as Terminator, despite, as you argued, there only being 2 good movies in it, you're trying to service too many things. You're trying to make this true to the original while also being a movie on its own, while also hopefully launching a new series. Just make one good Terminator movie. That's all you need to do.
Yeah,
that's it.
I just feel like the mythology isn't holding up under all this. I feel like it's just
because it's retconned every time.
Yeah, and it's just once you get locked into hitting 1997 or hitting 20 whatever. And once we pass those years, like it just doesn't, you got to stop, man. You just either it's a clean reboot or just jump ahead in time. And frankly, I mean, even Arnold Schwarzenegger couldn't necessarily save it, and when he came back, obviously overseas is a different story, but nobody domestically walked out of that movie saying Arnold's back.
Right.
It's like it didn't do that either for him, So I just feel like the movie, that franchise just needs to retire.
I will say, switching gears back to Transformers, which you mentioned, I have not even seen the most recent Transformers. I'll say that. Some of you guys might tear me apart for saying that, but that franchise
or thank you, send you flowers.
Maybe. But that franchise
Guys,
really
I think
lost
we found
me.
a Transformer. That's the movie. That's it.
That's the whole thing.
Yeah,
no, I really actually did enjoy the first one, and after that, I think they just went off the rails.
Yeah, the first one's fun.
And so I roll my eyes, first instinct when I see, another decade of Transformers. But I respect the fact that Paramount is saying, like, these movies make money no matter what.
Yeah.
They do extremely well globally. They're obviously going to keep making them, but they had this writer's room that was basically like a TV show's writer's room to try and figure out, get some creative juices flowing, figure out what the stories are going to be.
Not just
good people like Akiva Goldsman and
Kirkman.
and Robert Kirkman from The Walking Dead. And so that actually gives
Harold
me
Pinter.
hope.
No,
That gives me some real hope for what they could do with this series and maybe make good, substantial movies for Transformers. Because I think, love or hate them, those last few movies are not the most well-formed or well-thought-out
that
movie.
last one, like, I've been forgiving of the Transformers movies because, you know what, Michael Bay does what he does, and he does it better than people who try to do, his style.
Mm-hmm.
But that last one was just, it was so shameless in so many ways. It was shameless in its pandering to China, and it's a story. It was pandering in its sense of humor or lack thereof. Everything about it just didn't work for me. I just didn't care for those characters. It didn't make sense as a story. Optimus didn't seem like Optimus to me anymore.
I think a creative reset is good for that series, even if it's not a reboot or something like that. But just getting some new minds into it might be the best thing for it, and could actually put out some really quality products. So I'm surprising myself about my optimism for that franchise.
Okay, so that's your glass half full. Not Captain Marvel.
Not Captain Marvel, but Transformers. Okay. Oh God, who am I?
It's a new day.
All right, okay. Let's move on before.
So we've talked about, that's 2 big franchises down and like 3 left to go here. Okay. Let's talk about somebody, speaking of being totally over something, Daniel Craig is so done.
We are not
with
over
the Bond
Daniel
movies.
Craig. Daniel Craig is over
James
Daniel
Bond.
Craig. Yeah.
Daniel Craig is over the whole James Bond thing. Mind you, he's out promoting the new James Bond movie. And when your quote, sure, he's being glib and he exaggerates, and it's not the first time he's griped about being Bond. And every Bond actor does that at some point. But when you make this very visceral remark that I would rather smash this glass and slice my wrists than do another Bond movie, that tends to get picked up places, including here at IGN. And that's maybe not what you want the conversation to be going into your big expensive movie.
Right.
Especially if it's your last one.
And with context to that, he's saying, maybe ask me in a year or 2 years how I'll
he
feel
needs a
then,
break.
but right now I need a break. This is a lot. And also something I thought was interesting is that, usually when you're performing, you aren't thinking about how you look, but so much of Bond is focused on being cool and, his persona. And that's
shape
apparently
now with his version of Bond.
and apparently that's just been really exhausting
Yeah.
for him, which I thought was an interesting comment. But yeah,
Kind of Jackman's been saying that too. And,
but saying, you'd rather kill yourself
Yeah.
than make another Bond movie isn't a huge sign of confidence for a movie that Spectre looks awesome. I'm very excited about
I love
Spectre.
Skyfall,
Yeah.
and it's the same
I think he'll be
group
great.
as back. But yeah, I just feel like as the guy who is the front man in that band, if you will.
Right.
Like, your job is to sell that movie. Just, I know you're tired. I know you probably just stopped filming a few months ago. But dude, you got a thing to sell. This is very expensive, and this is a thing that has changed your life. And I'm not sitting here trying to lecture the man. I'm not James Bond. But it's just like you have a job to do, and you're hurting a thing that hundreds of other people worked on, And I don't think he didn't intentionally mean to do that, but you have to be mindful of everything that comes out of your mouth when you're promoting your movie. I mean, look at Matt Damon and The Martian and all the backlash he got for glib remarks that he didn't probably think about when he was saying.
Right. Yeah, it is interesting though
Not that it hurt that much.
Yeah, it is interesting, given that the conversation even before Daniel Craig said any of these things was about whether someone should replace him, and not even whether, but who. Like it's almost a foregone conclusion that he will be on the way out, and he's certainly had a good run as Bond, and what he said is that he would hope that whoever else takes up the mantle does it even better than what they've been doing, which I think is a great goal to strive for. But if he really is that done with it, then have this be a great final act, and act respectfully. Maybe don't keep making comments like that.
Because he also said, just because the wrist slitting part just wasn't enough, he also had to go on record and say, if I do another one, it's only for the money.
Right.
So okay, let's say he does another one, and he's out there promoting it, that thing is going to keep coming back to haunt him every time. He's like, well, we have a cracking good script. Nobody's going to believe you because they're just like, you said before, you only did it for the money.
Right. But no, really, this one has a great script. Really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of the issue, I feel like the best interviews come when actors let their guard down, but then this always is the issue that if your guard is down, maybe you make an offhand remark that looks terrible on paper and really does, hurt things. I don't think that this will necessarily hurt Spectre, too many S movies in the long run, but I do think that it is a sure sign, and hopefully studio executives feel the same way, that we should start finding a new Bond.
Maybe it's time to launch in a new direction there.
Yes.
Speaking of launching new directions, me with my segues, Furious 8, new trilogy, says Vin Diesel.
Final trilogy, says Vin
Final
Diesel.
trilogy, too.
Yes.
And we now officially have a director for Furious 8, and it's F. Gary Gray, who worked with, first of all, he's coming off the huge success of Straight Outta Compton. But he's worked with both Vin Diesel and The Rock before in movies. He did Be Cool with The Rock, and then he did, A Man Alone with Vin Diesel. With Vin Diesel. He really is like kind of if you're not going to get Justin Lin or James Wan back, he's a good fit. Like it's good casting, if you will. Like he's an experienced action director who did The Italian Job, so he can do car chase stuff and make it fun and all that. He's good with ensembles, as his other movies have shown. And you can slap the name from the director of Straight Outta Compton out there, like you need that in Fast and Furious.
Furious 8 from the director of Straight Outta Compton.
And if
we're gonna get into the rap game now.
And I just think that it's like I said, it's good casting. It's a good fit for it, and I'm sure the studio is happy that, because some of the bad press they had about the hunt for the director and everything, he is like the safest and smart choice too. I
have no complaints, and I'm interested to see what this next trilogy will be for the Fast and Furious franchise.
Horse racing.
I would totally just travel back in time and have it be horse races. I would absolutely be there opening night.
Speaking of traveling back in time, you didn't work for us when we did I think it was our April Fool's Day joke this year, was we did Fast and the Furious Back to the Future mashup video.
Oh man, that could happen. Let's make it.
It could.
We're coming up to the Back to the Future day.
Now Ghostbusters, they are reportedly going to do an animated movie, which will exist within the sort of the continuity of the now rebooted Ghostbusters universe. The way that the animated Spider-Man movie that Lord and Miller are doing exists within the Marvel Sony rebooted Spider-Man universe.
I'm confused.
Or at least it doesn't, or at least it won't negate anything that happens in the other one.
The Ghostbusters reboot confuses me.
Okay, hit me. I want to hear this.
No, just are they just trying to hit every possible audience to make sure that this franchise remains significant? I don't think anyone who loves Ghostbusters would say you need to put your hand into every single pot. Are you
irked by, because I'm a little irked by, it's one thing when you get, okay, we got Bill Murray to make a cameo or a small role, but when you bring back Sigourney and Ernie Hudson and Dan Aykroyd, it's like, that's gonna pull me out of the movie every time these guys pop up.
I'm just curious what the goal is beyond making money, right? And that's sort of how I look at a lot of franchises now, and I don't think that there is, and that's really disheartening, and I think should pull fans out when you're saying, is your goal solely here just to make your own money, or do you have some I don't know, just hope for the creative property that you're trying to make? And I'm all about that, female Ghostbusters movie. I wish that there was a way for me to describe it without calling it the female Ghostbusters movie. It's just a Ghostbusters movie. It seems awesome. It just seems like it'll be great. But when you start with there and then you're like, but we're also doing a male Ghostbusters movie and we're doing an animated Ghostbusters movie. And then there was the discussion at one point that wasn't it's going to cross over with 21 Jump Street.
No, that was Men in Black.
Men in Black. But still, they're trying to
Sony, they could all end up back.
But I think that Sony maybe is just floundering right now and trying to throw everything against the wall.
But also,
and see what sticks.
to kind of go back to Terminator. I mean, if Terminator only had 2 good movies, Ghostbusters only had 1 good movie. It had.
Hey, there are Ghostbusters 2 defenders.
It's not awful, but it's not the one anybody's gonna necessarily be like, well, yeah, there's one good, but there was the cartoon, but honestly, I don't know a lot of people that actually remember the cartoon as strongly as they do other cartoons of that time.
I just feel like, in the rush to gobble up release dates and just the business of everything overwhelming the presentation of it, I wish that they could just wait and see how the first Ghostbusters project reboot that they're working on is doing before announcing all these other ones. And maybe, we're part of the problem in that we report this news and we blast it out there, and maybe
you heard it here first.
Yeah, we're the problem. But it is sort of this big cycle where the news gets announced about something someone cares about, it gets put out there, the fans glom onto it before they really know anything about it, and I'm fully guilty of that right now, but it's not anything that has me excited, and it also just makes me concerned for what they're doing with Ghostbusters.
Yeah, you do wonder, Paul Feig is a nice guy, and he does seem like he's come up with a good take and everything. However, you do wonder how much sort of studio pressure and meddling and universe building is being hoisted on him at this point, and
do we need a Ghostbusters expanded universe? Is that something that
don't. It seems like Ivan Reitman was pushing for it, and Sony. They want to print that money, and to me, it's to you as well. It's not a given that you're gonna print money.
Yeah, and we could be looking back at this 4 years or 5 years or however long from now and saying we were the biggest idiots ever. This all worked so perfectly.
We'll be
this
too
is
busy
great.
talking about Marvel's 2020 movies.
Yeah,
at that point,
exactly. Just looking that far ahead. But for now, there's no vote of confidence for me on this that gives me enthusiasm for what's ahead, other than just making me confused.
Yeah, it just sounds like a lot of fan service to it at this point. let's move on from Ghostbusters and talk about Star Wars. Now, there's some just rumors, casting rumors, and I'm pretty sure I can nail her name. Gugu Mbatha.
No one is here to tell you said it wrong. So,
I can say that. I can say Gugu Mbatha, and I can say Adewale Akinyi Agbaje.
I'm very proud. I'm very impressed right now.
But I can probably slaughter a lot of other people's simpler names. You look at my last name, so I do feel for folks who have to spell or explain their name. But she was in Jupiter Ascending, okay? And she, a small role though in Jupiter Ascending, but she basically played Giant Ears character Alien, right?
Yeah.
And then she was also in, oh my God, I just forgot
Belle?
it. Well, Belle, but the Beyond the, it was a music thing. It was basically like The Bodyguard. It was her and Nate Parker. Beyond the Music or something like that. I'm sorry, I just wrote about this the other day. Hadn't seen the movie, so sorry about that. But she is a very talented, lovely British actress. Oh, that's pandering. I'm sorry. She's a lovely actress. But she's a fresh face on the scene, and she's.
And the rumor is that she would be one of multiple female leads.
Yeah, that there are
in Star
at least
Wars
two
Episode 8.
female leads.
Yeah.
And Tatiana Maslany does seem like she's out of the running.
Yeah, it
That's
seems like
too-
she's leaning towards this Boston Marathon bombing movie called
Yeah.
Stronger
Yeah.
over this, which, as
or
much.
maybe she got turned down for it.
Or maybe she got turned down for it, yes.
Yeah.
I think that
She
is
got
not a
Rogue
terrible
One
thing.
again.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I adore Tatiana Maslany.
She's gonna end
wonderful.
up in one of these.
She's so talented, but I also
Marvel
think
should
that
just poach her at this point.
yeah, I mean, she's going to get a role and it's going to end up being the perfect role for her beyond Orphan Black.
Okay, not to circle back too much, but what do you think about her for Captain Marvel?
I don't know. I don't know if she's what I picture. She's very small. I sort of imagined Captain Marvel to be a bit
Okay.
more imposing,
Little-
to be able to
little
stand
taller?
up among
Okay.
the guys.
But on the Star Wars Episode 8 front, she would be up for a role in Episode 8 if I wasn't clear. Do you? I mean, this does seem to be a nice sort of new day for Star Wars in that, it is going to be a more diverse cast. It's going to have more female roles instead of just Princess Leia and Mon Mothma showing up for a speech, and Shmi Skywalker. you
Yes.
know? So yeah, Padme. Okay,
I loved Padme when I was younger.
Yeah.
And looking back, I'm like, oh, you were not the best written female character ever, but your hair thing was weird and cool. I had
Well, Carrie Fisher had that too.
yeah, it's true.
But I think it is cool that we could have two female protagonists, if this report is true, in Episode 8, and that it's, I wonder if could the villain be a woman in it? Could we be, because I know Benicio is a villain, but it would be kind of cool to see. Especially with Captain Phasma coming up now, like more female villains in Star Wars too.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Instead of just the mustache-twirling Brits.
We had a chance to go to the Disney store on the Walt Disney Studios lot. That's where I got this awesome shirt. I hope that
Droids and
BB-8
BB-8.
is not a racist or something terrible that makes this a bad purchase. But when we were there,
We'll digitally wipe it
yeah,
out.
we'll
in a
just
few
we'll just
months.
cut that part out of my
Yeah.
shirt. But while we were there, we were talking with one of the employees about Captain Phasma, and what she said was, she's like, I almost wonder, will she become good? Will she be a villain who turns out to be a
Ooh.
hero? And I was like, you know what? I hope not. I hope that she's just like deliciously evil
Yeah.
and awesome. And I love Gwendolyn Christie. I think she's phenomenal on Game of Thrones. Like, just let her have fun with that.
Yeah.
We don't need a redemption arc.
Because she's
We just
already
need a great
like
female villain.
a good guy on Game of Thrones. So I'd like to see her, use her kind of physically imposing presence and make her full-on villain.
And we've never had a Star Wars female villain before. I mean,
Yeah.
it always feels a little frustrating that we have to qualify them like that. Like,
Yeah.
we've had great Star Wars villains, but we haven't had a great Star Wars female villain. But at the same time, I don't think it should matter
Yeah.
one way or another. I think that we should have both, and that it shouldn't be a big deal as long as they're well-written characters. And I
Right.
think, and this is again coming off of like nothing that we really know about Captain Phasma, other than
Yeah.
I love Gwendolyn Christie and she looks badass.
Yeah.
But I would hope that she is cool and great and stays a villain, and maybe we get other female
And I hope they
villains.
don't kill her off in this movie either.
Oh,
I
yeah.
want her to stick around for a few, you know?
Please. I would be so devastated.
I know, seriously.
Again, knowing nothing really about
There will
this
be
movie.
riots in the theater. People will not like that. The nerds will be very unhappy.
Yes.
No, watch she kills BB-8. That would just be. Geez,
I'll put her.
That'd
I'll
be
put
like
her
a love-hate
Phasma
thing
helmet.
right there. Like, oh, she's such a deliciously evil villain, but she killed BB-8.
She
you
could decapitate him, not knowing that he's just a magnet.
know? That would be awesome, actually. You know they're going to have to do something like that with him at some point, like because they always had C-3PO getting blown apart,
Right.
right?
Maybe.
All right. Well, we kind of want to hear you. We kind of want to hear it. We
We
do want to
definitely
hear
wanna
it.
hear.
You know, your thoughts on Captain Phasma, Episode 8, all that jazz. Let's talk a little. Let's give a plug actually for our comrades in New York who are covering New York Comic Con. That is this week. Now, not really big movie presence there, but plenty of stuff on TV, plenty of comics stuff. Marvel TV will be there in force with Daredevil and Jessica Jones and Luke Cage. So we're
And Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Agent Carter.
yes, all of that jazz. So there's going to maybe there'll be some movie tie-in announcement stuff to that. I mean, they did, you know, obviously announce their big movie release date shift today, but be interesting to hear like, and then Luke Cage will be in, you know, Captain America 57 or whatever.
Well, what's weird is that, you know, while those connections haven't necessarily been going in both directions, and Kevin Feige even said, you know, that it's inevitable that the movies will have to start directly referencing the shows at some point. But, you know, we already have the Netflix expanded Marvel universe where those shows are all building up to the Defenders, sort of like what the Phase 1 did with the Avengers. And
Right.
then over on ABC, we already have two Marvel shows, which are Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Agent Carter. They're also working on Mockingbird. I almost said Mockingjay because we've been talking about the Hunger Games. Mockingbird, which will be a spin-off with Bobby Morse and Lance Hunter. They're also apparently working on a damage control comedy, which is about the people who are cleaning up after the messes the Avengers make. And
Which is
there's
an
still
awesome idea.
and there's still this mystery John Ridley
Right.
series that is going to be a Marvel show over there. So that's 5 over there, like what, 5 I guess on Netflix, and we have all the movies. At a certain point, they just need to focus inward instead of
Seriously,
saying
it's-
how are they going to connect to each other.
I mean, this is crazy. It's going to be an amazing juggling act. One other thing I want to mention about New York Comic Con that I found pretty funny was the free Wi-Fi there is being brought to you by LexCorp. I'm sorry. I watched they released a promo video. They launched a viral site for it today, and it's I always thought it was called LexCorp, but it's called LexCorp. So, but I do like that the BVS viral marketing, is being led by Lex Luthor. He did an interview with Fortune magazine where he revealed sort of this rivalry with Bruce Wayne. And you know, because Bruce Wayne didn't really want to go after like government contracts and stuff like that, which is unlike the Christian Bale Batman, because all his stuff was basically military R&D, and he had his whole government cell phone contract thing for his eyes and ears thing on the ground from Dark Knight. But yeah, I just think that it's kind of interesting that Lex Luthor is actually leading the charge on
Lex,
Batman.
Apparently he talked a big talk, but what we've heard from our colleagues in New York Comic Con is that the LexCorp Wi-Fi is not the greatest. So maybe he should step up his game, or Bruce Wayne could come in and save the day.
Ooh, now that
Could you?
Comeback day 3 of New York Comic Con.
Wi-Fi rivalry.
Well, one thing I want to talk about the LexCorp thing was that the viral video was talking about an operating system. They're launching a new operating system. And it got me thinking, again, going back now to Terminator, it reminds me sort of like Skynet and Terminator Genesis, where they're launching this new, aren't they launching a new operating system or something? And
Yeah, Genesis is what will infect all of them, and they'll all willingly connect themselves
So I
to
wonder,
it.
is Lex Luthor's plan basically in Batman v Superman sort of somehow a Skynet type thing?
Maybe. I mean, it's a very
or maybe
modern
it's-
type of technological fear that a lot of, properties are sort of mining, and it would make sense. But this is a movie that has a lot.
Maybe it
that
ties
is-
into her instead,
Yeah.
Yeah,
maybe. But yeah, this is a movie that's juggling a lot of things, and it would be interesting to bring, together something so based in our own world and our own fears.
Ooh, I wonder if that could tie into maybe Justice League movies. Maybe they are trying to pull a Marvel here and plant the seeds that much
Maybe,
further
yeah,
out,
that would be smarter to have like a long throw
Yeah.
instead of something that they're dealing with in this movie, because they already have to do a lot in introducing these Batman characters, introducing Wonder Woman, and introducing how they all fit together with Superman.
Right. Well, we're curious what your folks' thoughts are on the Batman v Superman viral marketing, on the LexCorp stuff, on what we were just saying about the Skynet-like operating system. I don't think you announce a LexCorp operating system and not have it become part of a villainous plot. It's a little too easy not to.
But it is very clever marketing one way
Isn't
or
it
another.
though? It's great. Now let's talk about in our few moments that we have left here, some movies opening up this weekend. We have a couple of things actually I want to clarify about last week's podcast. Yes, I screwed up. Rita Coolidge sang "All-Time High" in Octopussy. I want to just own up to that. Thank you for the viewers and listeners for pointing that out to me. And then we actually have a message from somebody about Mars Needs Moms.
Oh, yay!
Curtis.
Yay!
Curtis wrote in, and he said, "I've seen Mars Needs Moms. It is a Disney animated movie, and yes, it sucks." So thank you, Curtis, for that. Actually,
Thank you,
Curtis
Curtis.
from Ireland too. I used to live in Ireland when I was a wee
Oh
lad.
yeah, well,
Well-
maybe he was a childhood friend who just felt like you needed some
Like a
Mars
little
Needs Mom
boost.
support. Yeah.
Exactly. And
I'm
then
so impressed every time someone says they saw that movie.
right.
I'm like, good for you.
You're one of the 6 people. That movie is a huge flop. You should wear that like a badge of shame.
No, pride. I've been so happy that people have actually
see.
responded to that
I
call
had
to
the
action.
thing here and I lost it. Oh yes. So opening this weekend, Pan, with Hugh Jackman as Blackbeard, Peter Pan origin story.
Have you seen it yet?
Yes.
I have
it
not.
sucks. It's awful.
I read an article on Mashable that's saying it's in fact so terrible that you need to see it. That it's just this big cultural moment for just how terrible movies can
Alice
be.
in Wonderland was horrible, and that thing made $1 billion. So although Pan is tracking at really bad, legitimate big flop numbers of mid-teens, and it cost something like $150 or $200 million or whatever to make. It costs way too much.
Well,
And
Joe
it's
Wright
stupid.
will always have atonement. So
I like Joe Wright too. That's the thing. He just. This isn't his wheelhouse, and some of the acting in it is horrible. It's that big green screen, big face green screen acting of like that.
the article that I was referencing basically referred to Garrett Hedlund's character Hook as Vincent Adultman from BoJack Horseman, which made that he was Vincent Adultman, but that a voice from another galaxy was speaking for him.
He sounded like Nixon. He sounded like Richard Nixon. He's doing this whole thing.
This is making me so interested in going
Go see
to
it
see
then.
it now.
Go see it. Fine. You're young. You still have years ahead of you. Lose those 2 hours. Go ahead. Trying to save you, but never mind. Also opening up this weekend, but only in New York and LA. So for our listeners there and viewers there, go check this one out. Steve Jobs. Saw that this week. That's awesome.
Yeah, I've only seen overwhelmingly positive things. I was going to go with you, and then work kept me. Work keeping me away from seeing movies for work. I've only seen really positive things, and I heard that Sorkin's take on it is just so exciting and fun to watch.
You know what? Him and director Danny Boyle, they embraced the whole "Think Different" slogan. And it's a really inventive, very inventive and ballsy way to do a biopic. It's not the cradle to the grave kind of typical structure. It is very theatrical. Sorkin was a playwright, and it's basically a backstage drama behind 3 different product launches. But the heart of the story really is his estrangement from his daughter and his denial of paternity and how he gradually has to sort of come to terms with that and warm up to her as much as he can, and how his own sort of being adopted affected him in that regard. So it's definitely a very well acted, well made movie. Fassbender's fantastic. Yeah, he doesn't look like Steve Jobs, but you don't really care.
How is Seth Rogen? Because I always
He's
assumed
good,
that
but he's not
Fassbender
in
would be
it
great.
that much. He's I mean, he's in it. He's definitely, Woz is a big part of it. But it's a supporting role, and he's fine. He handles his own with that Sorkin dialogue, and Kate Winslet's really good. She plays what is her name, Joanna Hoffman, I think, who is basically his right-hand person at the company. Had to fight a lot of battles for him. Had to put up with him. Kind of his, they joke in the movie that she's his work wife and all that, and she's good. Her accent, oddly enough, kind of comes and goes at times. But she's supposed to be a Polish immigrant, and in the first act, I didn't really notice her accent, and it's earlier in the timeline, and then her accent got stronger later into the movie, and there were some rumblings that Steve Jobs' wife, who's not in the movie, is not even mentioned in the movie, nor his children from that marriage. It's only Chris Sann, his one-time girlfriend, and Lisa, his daughter, his oldest child. That Jobs' wife at the time of his death, his widow, was basically kind of pressuring Sony and Leonardo DiCaprio and Christian Bale to pass on the movie, which I think is kind of an interesting inside baseball thing. And then finally, some other stuff opening up this week. Knock Knock, which is getting horrible reviews, including from IGN.
Yeah.
Eli Roth and Keanu Reeves movie. I think it's going to be on VOD as well. So that's everything opening up this week. The Martian did really well last weekend, about just under 55 million. So that's expected to stay on top of the box office again this weekend. You saw it, right?
I did, yeah.
You
I
liked
had
it.
since I really enjoyed it. It was just such a great movie-going experience.
Right.
Like just exactly what I want to get from going to the movies. I thought it was really funny. I thought it was one of the best Matt Damon performances that I've seen in a really long time. He really got to play to his strengths, and I felt like the writing really supported that. I thought, there have been some complaints about, all the supporting cast members maybe not getting the most time to shine, but I think that showed great restraint from Drew Goddard in not feeling the need to give every character in the movie their own story, because that's when you get very bogged down. Like there's one A to B story being told, and feeling like you're coming into these characters' lives for brief moments during the point. It's
about taking him home, not about,
totally. And I think that's what I find really enjoyable about movies like that. And so I was really impressed, and just visually, it was beautiful. I saw it in 2D.
It's Ridley Scott's best thing in years.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to about do it for this week's podcast. Check us out on Twitter at Jim Vavida, at Terri_Schwartz. I got that right?
Yes.
Right?
The underscore is key.
Doing good. Send us your thoughts at keepingitreal@ign.com. And let us know in the comments below any questions, thoughts you have. And for all things movies, keep it here on IGN.